this video, I'd like to talk about evolution, firstly and foremost. I was speaking about it earlier with somebody, I think it was my mom, but she wanted off, so now I'm talking to you. Um, to cover this evolution, we're speaking about leading up to covering basic groundwork of value and aspects, because I understand that that's for most people, for a lot of people, not everybody has been around for a little while, and I'm not the only one to have found it. But for most people, it's going to be new terminology that doesn't seem to really make a lot of sense. So we're going to make sense of it, because the reason that we use this terminology is that it's the most basic, the simplest format we can use to get the idea across and to share this intelligence with other people, so that we can all get hip and get on board, and also just to share this basic terminology, in as simple as it possibly can be translated. Because ultimately we're trying to work with clearing up our communicative errors. So, value and aspects is terminology that I'm putting into play to cover the basic groundwork of how we operate our resource technology as human entities. But first, speaking about evolution, because it gives a good example of it. Uh, Evolution considers, as we know it, as it stands in our educational institutions, survival of the fittest takes precedence in our consideration of how evolution functions. And this is correct in a manner of speaking, but we've mistranslated it. And you have to, as I speak to this, please keep in mind that evolution is a theory. It's not. We don't have any proof of it. It's not a rock solid reality. And I mean, ultimately, it is not a rock solid reality. We'll get to that, but the way that it's taught to you and presented to you in your educational institutions and your public schooling and whatnot, it's presented as though it's a be-all end-all, as though they absolutely know it, but actually they don't know anything at all about it. And that you're going to find that that's the case with many of the things that they taught you to be absolutely certain. The scientific community and the community people in general like to jump ahead and kind of proclaim themselves as knowing everything, as being wise and hip to the plan, but they're not. We haven't really made much progress in our understanding in a long time, and that's what we need to deal with now, because we kind of been ignoring that. So evolution, in the way that we regard evolution as it stands, and our understanding of how it transpired, the preceding the procession of evolution as we know it, it taking survival of the fittest into the largest consideration, and considering that as though survival of the fittest is speaking to the strongest, fastest creature, the most predatorial and capable creature. It doesn't work. That idea doesn't work, and there's a reason for that. But as we view it, as we see evolution as transpiring up to now, that idea doesn't fit at all. It does not stand to reason. It's entirely illogical and irrational. Uh, Firstly, I mean, the primates that were proclaimed to have evolved from are not, by any standards, the strongest or fastest creature, or even the most capable. And there's really no reason as to why they, amongst all other creatures, would have evolved into something like us, unless you put into play the concept of there being an intervention event, something alien to us stepping in and causing this evolution to happen deliberately. It's not something, as insofar as we understand nature itself, it's not something that could possibly have happened on its own. It can't be a mistake. It's not a random genetic mutation. It's just that's not possible. And it is not possible. I mean, really, anything is possible, but we've created the plan. We've mapped out the structure of how this works already, and that is not something that could happen. And it's ridiculous, in fact, that we proclaim it as being so. And there's a huge gap in our understanding there, and we really should be looking at that. We should be investigating that. We should be investigating that with our eyes open, carefully and considerately. But we don't. We ignore it. We blow it off, and our educational institutions teach our children to believe that it's absolutely certain, where in fact totally off. But as it stands, evolution as we see it leading up to us, the only possible way that it could have happened is if something alien to us stepped in and deliberately altered the genetics in play. Because survival of the fittest, speaking to the strongest, fastest creature, firstly, it doesn't apply, and it's entirely irrational. It does not stand to reason. This is because we, as Homo sapiens and even primates particularly, but we as a global culture, the entirety of the creatures, earthly creatures, we have never resided in a strictly primal habitat. There has always been technologies in play. We haven't appropriately identified them yet, which is what we're getting at here. But there's always been mechanical elements in play. And of course, we had the Newtonian concept of the universe as being a mechanical, mechanism, and that is true as well. That's very true, and that works. And then we, flipped over to relativity, and we started using that as an existence concept, and that works too. It all works. It all fits together. But this, being that we have lived in a technological environment, that there are in fact technologies in play, mechanical elements that can be manipulated, there is an intelligent design in play for sure. It's a matter of fact. You can't deny that. If you try to, just take off. You're being stupid. But sorry, but survival of the fittest is going to relate to, or it's going to translate to survival of the smartest, or perhaps more properly spoken or more appropriately termed, survival of the most adaptable. And primates could take that standard, being that they're closer to us, and that's the reason we identify as though we had mutated from them. Which I don't think we did at all. But we most closely identify with them because they're similar to us and they have the same characteristics, which would allot for them manipulating the mechanics in play and understanding the technology to some degree. However, they don't, do they? I mean, we see primates in action. They don't make any progress in that regard. They do not display any intelligence regarding the use of the resource technology we have, which is value and the value and the aspects in play and how we coordinate them, because these values are what's causing for our reality to happen. As we move into quantum mechanics and see how things operate at a fundamental level, or at least closer to the core, this becomes evident that it is in fact our direction, our observational direction, that causes for reality itself to happen. The physics that are operating under our directive. We decide for them. There's an existence concept that we all agree upon. As it stands, it's relativity, but that is going to change. Quantum mechanics will replace that, and that's the evolutionary leap that we're taking at the moment. However, in order to operate under that presumption, under that existence concept of quantum mechanics, quantum physics, we have to understand how the actual technology operates, which is values. And values are going to be meanings, reasons. They are everywhere. They're in the world. When we speak to the world being alive, what we're talking about is that it's functioning, it's operative. It's happening in front of you. Everything has a purpose and is in play. Everything affects everything else and coordinates our understanding of the environment, which coordinates the very existence of the environment. So, values are going to be, everything has a meaning. Everything has a standard meaning behind it that the world is informing you, is communicating to you. But when we look at things, we all we see is the aspects that we've attached to it. There are human aspects that are attached to everything, and we don't see the value. Spotters see the value. Spotters see reasons. Spotters see meanings, and spotters see the world communicating with them directly. And that's pretty much how we coordinate. That's how we move around. We negotiate the world. We negotiate with the world. But an example of this could be like music, when you listen to music on the radio or something, a song plays. That song, whatever happens to be playing, it's going to have a direct meaning to you. And whatever it means to you is what it means. That's the aspect that's attached to it. But when you look at it, as I've said before, your perception is directed at this object of interest. It hits aspects and it shatters, and it becomes, this and that and the other thing. It's everything that is taken into consideration regarding the musician, regarding the time, regarding everything that you might put into play regarding that particular song. What the musician might have been thinking, what the musician is communicating. The song is like a love song, and they're talking about an ex-girlfriend or something, and you think about that, and it's just, you see it as being entirely incidental, that it's just a song about his ex-girlfriend or what have you, love loss. But if you cut through that shit, there is actually a meaning that is being communicated to you directly. The world is always speaking in this way. It's always giving messages directly to you. You just don't see it because there are illusions. These aspects are, you consider it to be something other than what it is, and it really is. The world is constantly, just point of fact, out in the open, brazenly speaking to you, communicating with you, and you don't see it because you think it means something other than what it does. We don't take into consideration that there is an actual meaning directly in front of us, for us particularly, a personal identification. Because it's just, we attach aspects to everything, and this is in relation to objects, objects in general, but objects of interest in general, but actual inanimate objects. Nothing is inanimate. Everything's moving. Everything is vibrating. There's a frequency to everything. We'll get to tuning frequencies in a little while because nobody understands that either. Everybody's got an idea of what's going on, but nobody seems to actually get it. It doesn't. We've been, for the most part, those who dig in beyond public education, what public schooling that you're given, you're given a refeed of shit that's been presented over and over and over again, and it's never been right, but everybody thinks that they're absolutely correct because they don't know any better. As I've said before, it's like, the teachers don't know any better. They don't know that they're teaching you the wrong thing. They think that they know what they're talking about, but they don't. And it's the same as, like, if you blame the government for ruining everything, the government's like conspiring against us. The government people, they don't know what they're doing. They're just doing their job. They're doing what they've been told to, and for the most part, just about all of them believe that they're doing the right thing. They actually feel good about it most of the time, even when they're harming people. They believe that they're doing something for patriotism, or fucking national defense and shit like that. It's all aspects in play. They don't understand the actual meaning of it because they're blinded by these fucking illusions. But if you cut through the illusions, you can see the meanings in play. They're always going to be of value to everything around you if you're paying attention. And the more that you do this, the more that you pay attention, and the more that you respond to it, that you react to the communication that's being given to you, the more it will happen. And if you get to the point where you're consistently operative and you're always paying attention to the world, it will offer you higher directives. It will promote you to a new level. It will give you a higher level of play, more responsibility to deal with, to play with. And that's the resource technology we've always had available. Is there is this presence, this living God figure sort of presence that's alive in everything around us, and it's constantly communicating directly with you, and you can form a relationship with it, but we've been estranged from it because of these aspects, because we forgot what we were doing, and we got lost in all these considerations regarding what we think things are supposed to mean for the present time frame. We're just lost in a dream. We don't remember that we are essentially like in love with the world, that it's a romantic relationship between us and the environment, intelligent human entities and the environment, and everything that's in it. That's what it's always been. And any religious consideration or any spiritual consideration is there, everybody's going to tell you this, but nobody fucking gets it. You need to wake up. You're dancing with the world all the time. You're constantly in this dance with the world, and coordinating back and forth, and what you communicate to the world is the response that you're going to get from it. But most people don't know what they're doing. They don't know how they're communicating. You can ask the world for anything you want, but we don't know how to ask. And as I've said before, how we ask is by implication. Experience is made of implications. It's what we imply is so. The world will say, okay, there you go, and it will hand it to us, and that's your mind. You have a mind, and that's the tool that you're using. The third tool that you have in play for creation is your thought, is your general demeanor, your understanding, what you know things to be. Whatever you know is. If you cut through all the bullshit, the filters that are attached to you, the aspects that are in play, even cut through the value itself, through the meaning to the core, what you know is so. That's how you create reality. What you absolutely know for certain, if you can convince yourself of something, it will be. It's very, very difficult to convince ourselves of things, though, that we don't believe are possible because we have been trained. We've been trained for hundreds and hundreds of years now. It's been thousands of years. It's really since the advent of Christianity, ultimately, and the preceding cultural considerations that came into play leading up to Christianity, the political views that came into play there. It's really since then that we've been hardwired. We've been trained to believe a certain thing is what it is, and there's no changing that. And it's just this is how life operates, and there's no other way to do it. And just keep training on the same thing over and over and over again. And it's gotten to the point where we just totally forgot what we were doing or what we're capable of, who and what we really are. What we really are is the creative force in play. We are the God figure. We are the intelligent designer. And the environment, the world is our love interest. It's our best friend. It's our reflection. And we are reflected by it and in it and of it. It is made in our image and to our likeness. And even in Christianity, they couldn't drop these meanings, these values. They're always going to get through, no matter what. You can't get rid of that because it is the reality. It is the God figure in play. You can't shut it up. You can't toss it out. It's always going to get through, no matter how you try to hide it. Which Christianity has done a hell of a job hiding it by training people to believe precisely the opposite of what it teaches them. Jesus, their Messiah figure, taught them directly, and this is in the Bible because they could not shut it up. They couldn't stop the world from communicating this value that Jesus taught. I and the Father are one. You are the same as me. You can do as I have done. We are all one. He told us that we are all capable, that we are all the God figure. We are one with the world. Yet nobody gets it. Nobody believes it. That value is glaring out at you every time, especially the religious people out there. Every time you read your Bible, it's telling you that. Point of fact. It's point blank right in your face. It's telling you that over and over again. You are the God figure. You are the creator. You are capable of creating. The environment belongs to you. The story itself tells that. The story itself tells in Garden of Eden of us being the figures that are presented as the love interest of the world, that we're dancing with it, that it's our dance partner, the world itself, that it belongs to us. Every one of us, we own it. We are the creative influence. The story tells you that, and again, any spiritual consideration or any spiritual, scriptural, what have you, it's all going to tell you the same thing. They're going to tell you this repetitively over and over again, but nobody understands it. Nobody's cutting through the bullshit and seeing to the reality, cutting through the illusory aspects attached to everything, which in the prospect of Christianity, it's going to be this idea that God is some kind of a judgmental figure that's going to be judging you, that you have to be acting appropriately, or God's going to judge you. This is presented because of the aspects of our parentage, because many people have looked to the way that their parents have treated them. Obviously, your parents are your creator. Your parents created your body, and we misidentify ourselves with our body. So the values that are in play, the aspects attached to the values in play, are telling us that we are the body, and that the body is created by the parents, and so the parents must be the God figure, right? This is logical. This is the logical train of thought there. Our parents must be the God figure, and so what our parents tell us is the ruling factor, and that we have to be on our best behavior so that we don't get punished by our parents. And that's the aspects we attach to the idea of a God concept. And we're totally lost. We are totally off from what's actually happening. We've lost our sight entirely. We're blinded by this ridiculous concept, and it it makes sense because of the way that the Bible is told. Because people looked to God in that way, and they saw it as being this parental, judgmental figure, and they were talking about the force of play in play. They were talking about the creative element when they speak to the Holy Spirit guiding them. What do you think they're talking about? They're talking about the living world communicating with them, guiding them. However, when something happens that people have caused a reflection. For example, Sodom was entirely, that's what we're talking about. Sodom was entirely neglectful to its people, to its poverty-stricken people. It was totally, you know um it had nothing to do with sexuality, really. I mean, it had a little bit to do, that was a part of it, but these people were just greedy, gluttonous pigs that didn't. They were careless to their environment, to their city, and it got destroyed by nature because that's the reflection it got. It got burned down because it was probably filled with fucking trash, and it had hurt hateful fucking poverty-stricken people all over the place, wanting nothing more than to destroy the assholes that were putting them down. It got destroyed by itself, and they saw that as being God punishing them. And in a way it kind of is. It's the element of nature, it's the resource technology in play responding to the way that we are treating the environment, the way that we imply ourselves. What we imply is so. And in that case, they were implying that they didn't give a shit about anything. They were totally implying that we're just reckless and we don't care and we're arrogant and just absolutely totally reckless and careless and just throwing ourselves around and had no regard for life whatsoever. And so it was taken. It ended. They threw it away. You have to care about life. You have to care about it. You have to see it, understand it, feel it, live with it. There's a presence in the world that you just are totally, most people are totally missing. Not speaking to you directly, whomever you are. You might be, a better spotter than I am. But most people are just wandering around blind, have no idea what's really going on. Is they just got so many illusions stacked in front of them, filters upon filters upon filters to look at things that color their consideration of the environment, where in fact all that's really happening is you exist and the world exists, and we exist as each other, and we are all reflecting each other. If you can get to that free signature where you're just right here, right now, and nothing else is happening but my communication with the world, you will see this happening. And that's what the scratch maneuver is for. That's why we put it in play as a fourth unwritten active protocol to keep that tool at hand, because that allows for you to cut through everything and get to just now, here, nowhere, all one alone. Point blank. We are all alone here, nowhere. And it's just the void is reflecting us. So that's why we use value and aspects as terminologies, because it's as basic and as simple as it can get. There is a value in play always. There is a meaning to everything you come across. If you can see that meaning and you can see the reason for that meaning, you can ascertain what effects it might have, how it's interacting with other values in play, and what's going to happen, what is most likely, most probable to happen if you can manage to move fast enough to consider all the values in play, understand them, and assess the situation, quickly enough to regard it as it's happening. Then you can actually get ahead of now and see into the future, not because which there's always a question in that regard, if somebody can call the future, if somebody has a prophetic dream or something, which prophetic dreams obviously are going to be the brain interpreting what's happening and assessing what's likely to happen. Maybe, but spotters always have to ask the question, considering that we know we are the creative force, that we are the designers. We have to ask, if we have a prophetic dream, did we see what was going to happen in the future, or did we make it happen? But ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's just the fact that it happened is enough to make present it alone. There's there's just so much involved in our current education that if you cut through the aspects and see to the values, you can be taught by everything that you've been presented. But insofar as traditional public education, public schooling, and our educational institutions as they stand, they're teaching you moot, rote concepts, just repetitive nonsense. That's most of it's incorrect and most of it's unknown. There's very little of it that's actually rock solid, and that's only in regards to things that we have created, like language, literature, grammar, uh, music, arts, creative things that we've made happen. We know that because we made it. But insofar as nature and biology is concerned, that's all guesswork. We don't really know what's going on. We have a pretty good idea, but a lot of it is off. And if you cut through all the aspects, the illusions, and get to the value, the world will inform you. You can make use. You're taught all of these things in school, but you're never taught how to appropriate them. You're never taught how to actually make use of them. What they actually mean to you. The world will teach you if you pay attention to it. If you give it the opportunity to, the world will step up and it will inform you. It will educate you. It will guide you. And the more that you give it love, the more love it gives back because it does love you. The world loves every one of us. The world loves you completely, directly, and it's in love with you. And the more attention that you give it, the more attention it gives back because it's longing for nothing else than to make that connection. Nothing else matters. And we've been so cut off and divided from it and just extracted from the reality of our situation and divided from what we'd like to call God. We've been we've been lost. It's like a love affair that we've lost each other and we're trying to find each other again. That's how I think of it. That's how I look at it. It's very nostalgic, romantic, melancholy kind of ideal. That's kind of why I feel that way all the time. But that's my outlook. It may not be melancholy to you. Whatever it is, I guess the point is just try to wake up. Just try, pay attention, look around, see if you don't find that to be the case. The world is guiding you, influencing you. It loves you, and it will give you as much attention as you give it. So that's regarding the terminology of value and aspects. Thank you for this time. Sorry, this one's super long, but I hope it was helpful or at least insightful. Kilo Salai, Terry Uni, Namaste.